While the South China Sea shimmers as a vital trade route, it's also a stage for soaring tensions, crashed jets, and high-stakes diplomacy. Ironically, what was once a lifeline for Filipino fishermen has become a chessboard for superpowers, where helicopters fall, alliances flex, and every move sends ripples across the Indo-Pacific. Two U.S. Navy aircraft from the USS Nimitz went down in the South China Sea on Sunday, one a Seahawk helicopter, the other an FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jet. But all 5 crew members were rescued and are now in stable condition as the Navy investigates what happened. The first incident occurred around 2:45 p.m. local time, when an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter from the Battle Cats of Helicopter Maritime Strike Squadron HSM-73 went down during routine operations from the aircraft carrier. Search and rescue teams quickly recovered all 3 crew members. Just 30 minutes later, around 3:15 p.m., an FA-18F Super Hornet from the Fighting Red Cocks of Strike Fighter Squadron 5 FA-22 also crashed while flying from the Nimitz. Both crew members successfully ejected and were safely recovered. The Navy has not yet revealed what caused the crashes, leaving questions about weather, mechanical issues, or the exact nature of the training missions. Despite the incidents, operations aboard the Nimitz continue as the carrier remains deployed in the Indo-Pacific region. These crashes follow a troubling spring when the Navy lost 2 other Super Hornets in the Red Sea. To put it in perspective, a single FA-18 fighter jet costs more than $60 million. The Nimitz, the Navy's oldest active aircraft carrier, is now on its final deployment after more than 50 years of service. It leads Carrier Strike Group 11, routinely carrying out freedom of navigation and maritime security missions in the strategically sensitive South China Sea, a region increasingly tense due to disputes between the US and China. The Nimitz is not just old, it's one of the largest warships in the world. Its deployment comes amid rising tensions in waters claimed by multiple nations, though Beijing asserts control over nearly the entire region, defying international court rulings. Next year, this legendary carrier will retire, closing a chapter on a half-century of naval history. Over the past 2 decades, China has aggressively fortified its claims in the South China Sea, building military outposts that directly challenge the US mission to keep these international waters open. Washington's naval operations aren't just routine. They're part of a broader strategy to push back against Beijing's growing maritime influence. The recent Navy aircraft crashes come at a high-stakes moment. President Donald Trump is on a diplomacy tour in Asia and is expected to meet Chinese leader Xi Jinping this week, with trade as the central focus. Tensions between the 2 superpowers have spiked in recent weeks after a period of relative calm, with both sides imposing sweeping measures against each other. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced Sunday that the US has reached a framework trade agreement with China, easing some of the friction ahead of the Trump-Xi summit. Meanwhile, the United States has been steadily enhancing the Philippines' military capabilities, particularly in maritime security, preparing for high-end operations in the West Philippine Sea and across the broader South China Sea. The persistent threats from China extend beyond these waters to the entire Indo-Pacific region, prompting the US, the Philippines, and Japan to strengthen their alliance. Recently, their armed forces carried out a multilateral maritime exercise within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, signaling a united commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. These joint operations build on years of collaboration, honing the interoperability of their forces' doctrines, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Every maneuver is conducted in line with international law, respecting navigational rights and the safety of all nations. These exercises highlight the ongoing dedication of the 3 countries to regional security, maritime cooperation, and a rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific. China, however, has issued stern warnings to the Philippines, demanding an immediate halt to what it calls provocations, and cautioning that involving outside powers will ultimately be futile. The warning highlights the growing tension between Manila and Beijing, centered on Scarborough Shoal, known locally as Bajo de Masinloc or Panatag Shoal. This triangular atoll, long a fishing ground for Filipino communities, was seized by Chinese vessels in 2012 after a tense standoff with the Philippine Navy. Since then, China has maintained de facto control, even though the shoal sits well inside the Philippines' 200 nautical-mile exclusive economic zone under international law. As tensions rise, Washington has stepped up its support for Manila. On September 12th, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio sharply condemned Beijing's latest moves. The United States and the Philippines are bound by the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, which commits both nations to defend each other in the event of an armed attack in the Pacific, including the South China Sea. In recent years, Washington has made it clear that any attack on Philippine forces or vessels in the West Philippine Sea would activate the treaty. Japan, while restricted by its constitution on military action, has also strengthened ties with Manila. In July, Tokyo and Manila signed a reciprocal access agreement, letting Japanese troops participate in joint training exercises on Philippine soil and vice versa, signaling a growing regional alignment against Chinese assertiveness. Amid the high-stakes geopolitical maneuvering, the people most affected are Filipino fishermen who depend on Scarborough Shoal. For decades, the lagoon provided a rich supply of fish, supporting coastal communities in Zambales and Pangasinan. China's plan to declare the area a marine reserve has stirred alarm, as locals fear even more restrictions on access. For Manila, the proposed reserve is seen less as an environmental effort and more as a thinly veiled move by Beijing to solidify its control. In a world where strategic waters spark global tension and old alliances clash with new ambitions, every move in the South China Sea tells a story of power, risk, and irony. Stay informed as these high-stakes events unfold. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest updates.